Hello, second prep students. Our story for this year is A Christmas Carol. Of course, all of us know Christmas, and carol is the song of the Christmas. Our story is about this man. This is Mr. Scrooge. So the main character of the story is Mr. Scrooge. As you can see him in this picture, he's very happy. He's waving to people in the street. This means he was loved or he loves people. But this picture was taken at the end of the story because Mr. Scrooge's beginning was not like that. Let's start by chapter 1. This is Mr. Scrooge. This is the beginning of our story. As you can see him, he's sitting in his office. And this is his clerk or his assistant. As I said, our story is about a man. His name was Mr. Scrooge. He was a rich businessman whose partner Marley died 7 years ago in Christmas Eve. So he was very rich and he had a partner, but this partner died 7 years ago in Christmas Eve. Mr. Scrooge was not a good man. He was a mean man. He was very bad. Nobody liked him and he did not care that nobody liked him. He cared only about money. So the only thing Mr. Scrooge cared about was money. In chapter 1, Mr. Scrooge's nephew, who is the nephew? Nephew is his sister's son or his brother's son. But in our story, his nephew is his sister's son. And his sister died a long time ago. This nephew came to Mr. Scrooge's office to invite him to have Christmas with him and with his family. But he refused. Mr. Scrooge refused to attend this dinner. He said that Christmas was not a happy time for him. It was just a time for paying bills. So this was Mr. Scrooge's opinion about Christmas, that it was not a happy time, it was just a time for paying bills, buying things and paying bills for them. The nephew said that Christmas was a time for doing good to others, but his nephew had another opinion. His nephew said that Christmas was a happy time when you can help others, when you can do good for others. So as I said, Mr. Scrooge was not a good man. He was a mean man. He didn't like anybody and nobody liked him. He was very bad to everyone, even to his nephew. He refused to attend the Christmas dinner with him. And he was also bad to his clerk. So as you can see in the picture here, he's sitting in his office, feeling very cold. Of course, all the story happens in Christmas. And look at his clerk. He was very cold and he was trying to keep warm by putting his hand around a little or a small candle. Let's move to chapter 2. Almost after Scrooge's nephew left, 2 men came to his office. They were collecting money for the poor. So just after his nephew had left, 2 men came to the office of Mr. Scrooge collecting money for the poor people. They were collecting money for the poor people, saying that it was important at that time of the year for people to give generously to the poor. Of course, as I said, it was Christmas, so it was the perfect time to give money to the poor people so they can buy some clothes or some new things for Christmas. Scrooge then asked if there were still prisons or workhouses for the poor people or not. After the 2 men asked him to give them money, he asked about prisons and workhouses. And his question was very strange. Why are you asking about prisons and workhouses? He said that poor people can go to prisons or workhouses where they can work for their bread. One of the 2 men said that there were still prisons and workhouses, but some poor people would prefer to die than to go to any of them. So the two men answered that yes, there were still prisons and workhouses, but some poor people preferred to die than to go to these places. But Scrooge said that he paid money to build prisons and workhouses, and that was enough, and refused to give them any money and asked them to leave, so they left. So look how Scrooge was very bad. When the two men came to ask him for money for the poor people, he refused. He said, I pay money to build prisons and workhouses, and I think that this was enough. And also he asked the two men to leave. Please leave, I want to be left alone. After the two men left, I said it was Christmas. A little child came to the door of his office and started to sing a Christmas carol. Of course, this child wanted Mr. Scrooge to give him a little money. So what did Scrooge do instead? Instead of giving him some money, he picked up a stick and shook it at the child, who quickly ran off. So did Scrooge give the little child money? No, he was very bad. He didn't like anybody, as I said before, and he was very mean, and he loved money very much. So instead of giving the child a little money for Christmas or for singing this beautiful song, he threatened him and made him very afraid, so the child ran off. After the child left, Scrooge's clerk asked about tomorrow. Tomorrow was Christmas, so the clerk wanted a holiday on Christmas. Scrooge even wanted to take money from his clerk's wages or clerk's salary because he wanted a holiday on Christmas. So when his clerk asked for a holiday, Scrooge said, okay, you can take a holiday, but I may take some money from your salary. So the clerk said, it's okay, it's a holiday, it comes only once in a year. Look how mean he was. Chapter 3, let's first read, then go back to the picture. Now Scrooge left his office and went home. Scrooge then went home, and the strangest things happened. I said before that Scrooge had a partner whose name was Marley. And I said that Marley died 7 years ago in Christmas Eve or in Christmas night. Something very strange happened. Scrooge went to his house, and suddenly he saw Marley's face on the door knocker. What is a door knocker? In the past, there were no electricity. They used a knocker to knock on the doors. So for his surprise, Scrooge suddenly saw Marley's face on this door knocker. Then it returned to its original shape again. So he thought that he was just imagining. Another strange thing happened when he entered his house. The pictures on the tiles around the fireplace suddenly turned to be Marley's pictures. He had a fireplace in his room, and there were lots of pictures around this fireplace. Suddenly, the faces on the pictures all turned to be Marley's face. Then it went back again. Scrooge had an old bell that was hung from the ceiling started to move, then started to ring. He had a bell that was hung from the ceiling. Sometimes he used this bell to ask for the servant to come. Suddenly he found this bell ringing, then it started to move. He heard a strange noise that sounded as if someone were dragging some kind of chain on the floor. There was a very strange noise. It sounded like someone was pushing chains on the floor. Then suddenly he saw Marley's ghost in front of him. How was Marley's ghost? He was transparent and he had a long chain around him. So suddenly he was very scared to see Marley's ghost standing in front of him. And he was transparent, and he had lots of chains around his body. Let's go back to the picture. Here is Scrooge sitting down in front of the fireplace. Here is Marley standing in front of him, transparent as you can see, and he had a chain around his body. Before this happened, Scrooge thought that he was still imagining. No, nothing of this is real, I'm still imagining. But now, since he can see Marley in front of him, no, I'm not imagining, this is real. Scrooge was very frightened, but he asked Marley about his chain and the reason for his visit. He started to talk with Marley. Why are you here? What are you doing? Why did you come to visit me? And what about these chains around your body? Why do you move having these chains? Marley said that he had these chains for the bad things he had done when he was alive. Marley then said that I have these chains because the bad things I did when I was alive. Scrooge then thought about the chain he would carry after he died. Since Marley is carrying this chain around his body for bad things, how would be my chain? Scrooge is talking to himself. How would be my chain? How heavy would be my chain? Marley told Scrooge that he visited him to warn him that he still have a chance to avoid what had happened to him. So Marley told Scrooge that you still have a chance to be a good person. You still have a chance to change and not to have a chain like me. He also told Scrooge that he would be visited by 3 spirits, and they were the chance he told Scrooge about. So again, Marley visited Scrooge, number 1, to warn him that you still have a chance to change and be a better person. And he told him that he will be visited by 3 spirits, and they would be the chance for Scrooge to try to change to a better person. Okay, thank you and see you. Goodbye.